What's up, Smite fans? Wraithen here. I am back with another top 5 common mistakes that players make. This time, we're going to dive into the mighty jungle and cover some of the biggest jungle faux pas that are absolutely holding you guys back. As always, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already and leave a comment below if you agree or disagree. I'd love to hear your feedback as I do more of these. All right, let's get to it and kick it off with number 5. Listening to your solo laner, or any lane for that matter. Everyone knows this one. He's gotten soloed 3 times, invaded twice, bought the wrong items, and yet still somehow it's your fault. As the jungler, it is your job to dictate the pace of the game, and your time on the map is precious. Every time you head to a side lane that is behind, you are not investing your time in a lane that is ahead or on objectives that can get your team an advantage. By wasting your time trying to pull off a gank in a lane that's already long lost, you're potentially giving up map pressure in mid and around Gold Fury, which are far more important areas during laning. That being said, it's totally fine to show your face and throw a few abilities out at the enemy solo if you rotate over for a blue buff or if you're in the area. But I wouldn't overinvest with anything like a blink ult unless it's absolutely crucial that your solo laner get back into the game. All right, we're on to number 4, building full damage only. All right, listen. I'm guilty of this, especially when streaming and I try and show off for everyone. We all want the massive 5,000 damage Thor dunk or Susanoo ult, or that satisfying feeling of one-shotting an enemy carry with just one ability. But the reality is, unless you're miles ahead of the enemy team, you could potentially cost the game with this one. On some hard carry gods like Merc, Kali, and others, this is actually perfectly fine because you're expected to hard dive and be the one cleaning up. But for the most part, it's probably a good idea to get one of the hybrid items like Void Shield, Onsile, or Runic Shield if you're on a god that has to put themselves in the middle of the fight and has a huge portion of their damage or utility on their movement ability like Ravana or Pele with their ultimates. Also, Magi's Cloak is a criminally under-purchased item for junglers, especially against an enemy team with lots of CC that can lock you down or interrupt your abilities. All that damage means nothing if you can't get it off. Try and find a spot for Magi's if there's a lot of stuns, knockups, etc., because it gives you a free CC immunity effect every time the passive is up. It has health and prots on it. It's better to reliably get off 10% less damage than go for the all-in and get stunned out of all of it. Try to work in more hybrid or defensive items if you need them. Just grabbing a Void Shield here and there is pretty good for physical junglers. That about wraps it up for number 4. It's time for number 3. Knowing when to engage. This is probably one of the worst offenders on this list, but it's a tough problem to fix overnight, so I slotted it in at number 3. This is a watered down version of team fights, but for new players, I like to break it down into 4 phases. Pre-engage or poke, engage, post-engage, and cleanup. Depending on your character and how you built, you're going to fall into one of these 4 categories. The problem is, a lot of these are situational, they change from game to game, and they're going to be real-time judgment calls, so it'll take some time to feel out which category you belong in, and you can decide from there. First up is pre-engage. This is mostly just a note for poke characters that have long-range damage they can throw out prior to the team fight. Thanatos Scythe, Thor Hammers, Neja Ring Bounces, Merc 1s, you guys get the idea. These are all great ways to either set up or deter a team fight. If I hit somebody with a double tap on Thor, maybe that is a signal to my team that we're now going to engage. If you get a quick double tap when you're getting pressured, the enemy team may actually just back off and you've instantly deterred their team fight. Lots of value if you can reliably poke. Do it, even late game. Next up is the engage. You are the fight starter, you're the go button, and when you blink ult or ult in, the entire team fight revolves around you and the success of your abilities. You're typically going to get turned on, so gods that can build tanky like Ravana, Serket, Pele, Rat, even Thor, or have self-banish abilities like Neja, Daji, and Camazotz are great for this. Thor and Hun-Bats can also be used here as they have reliable escapes after they drop their ultimates, but remember, you pick and choose when the fight starts, so doing this on a god that's built full damage is not advisable as you're just going to get turned on and blown up. All right, post-engage. This is kind of my own creation. Most junglers can squarely fit into this category in my opinion. Post-engage is what I like to call roughly 2 to 5 seconds after the fight starts. My Geb has blink ulted, they've engaged on us, abilities are down, and it's time to pump out some damage. This is probably the hardest one to master as well because it relies on communication with your team, knowing when people are going in, timing your ultimate, and also being very aware of when the enemy abilities are down. With full CDR, most tanks have their kit back up very quickly, so you have a super narrow window to get in and do work. Consciously trying to ult, blink, fight, etc. in the post-engage phase will net you awesome results if you can practice it, and will make you a better jungler overnight. Remember, 2 to 5 seconds after the fight starts. All right, cleanup. Last phase, fast phase. Cleanup is right after the fight starts. Both teams get all their abilities off and everybody's low. This is where you come in. Typically, the slot is reserved for full damage hyper carries like Kali, Merc. Merc can also post-engage. Baka, Arachne. It can also be done by gods with good mobility, chase, and CC like Thor, Thanatos, and Rat, who can choose to use their ults at any time during the team fight to engage, post-engage, or even to chase and clean up. The idea here is simple. Mop up the stragglers and win the fight. All right, that's it for the high level on knowing when to engage. On to number 2. Number 2 is pretty simple, very fixable. It's not grouping with the team. I spend a lot of time teaching newer players, and this one is so egregious. I think I see it every single game that I opt for a role outside the jungle. Knowing when to group with the team is essential, especially if you have a lead over the enemy jungle. Far too often, junglers get overconfident, end up overextending, chasing kills, or split pushing instead of sticking with the team and taking objectives. Like a number of the tips today, you'll have to feel this one out, but it's safe to say, unless you're incredibly far behind, don't split push, and unless you're zoning for an objective, don't chase kills. Stay with the team. You guys are stronger together, especially if you have a big-time team fight ultimate like a Hun Bats. And lastly, number 1, I interviewed a dozen junglers and asked them, in their opinion, what the biggest mistake that people make. It's ganking too much, not farming, or planning ahead. Heck, I'm even guilty of this sometimes. When I was first learning how to play Serket, I was so caught up in her ability to just explode people early game that I completely ignored farm and went for dirty side lane kills almost every time my skills were up. I lost a lot of games due to not farming appropriately and falling behind. Farming efficiently is a tough job for a jungler, and really what it comes down to is planning a route and what's next. Most learning junglers that I see are all reactive, and they all look lost when thinking of where to go next and what to do. You should always have a game plan in your head of what camp, buff, lane, or gank you're going to show up to 2 to 3 steps ahead, and then adjust that plan as things change. Maybe I was going for a blue buff invade after mid harpies, but my ADC is getting ganked by the enemy jungler. If he lives, I invade, I take the blue, I take backs, I look for his speed, and if he dies, now I need to float to the other side of the map in case they go for gold. I need to be prepared for both situations. This is crucial when it comes to being a good jungler. You have to be planning out 3 to 4 steps ahead at a minimum in order to plan out your route. Well, that's it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to subscribe for more videos like this one and let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.